least 5 persons have died of cholera, with 88 diagnosed cases detected in different health districts in the central region of Cameroon. The Minister of Public Health, Dr. Manauda Malachi, urges the population to respect hygiene rules so as to better curb the spread of the disease. A fatality rate of 5.68 has been registered. How healthy are the fruits and food items we buy from our markets today? Are you aware that some traders pour poisonous substances such as formalin on some of these fruits which we consume on a daily basis so it remains fresh? Do you equally know that these preservatives used have negative effects on our health? Answers in the course of this newscast. And ensuring that extrajudicial killings are investigated and the criminals brought to book was one of the major preoccupations of bishops in Cameroon during the 48th plenary session of the National Episcopal Conference taking place in Yaoundé. Those were our major stories. The news in full in few seconds. Good evening, dear televiewers of Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much for joining me on today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast. For presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe. We begin with our major lead story. Cameroon's Minister of Public Health in a communique says 5 cholera-related deaths have been registered in the central region, with 88 infected cases recorded within 4 weeks. The cases were detected and confirmed in Obala, Jongolo, Cité Verde, Biamasi, Mfu, and Koldongo health districts. With a fatality rate of 5.68, the minister cautioned city dwellers to respect hygiene rules while promising the population that the ministry and its partners have already activated the incident management system for cholera epidemic at the central level. He says water purification kits have been made available to affected communities and the surveillance system put on alert. He calls on those manifesting symptoms such as vomiting and diarrhea to be immediately taken to health facilities. And away from that, we now talk something still related to our health page. UNICEF says the COVID-19 pandemic, lockdowns and other healthcare disruptions prevented at least 67 million children from entirely or partially receiving vaccines between 2019 and 2021. According to the UNICEF report, childhood vaccination declined by 44% in some countries during the pandemic, thus sending a worrying warning signal of possible resurgence of vaccine-preventable diseases like measles and polio. We have more of this report compiled by Innocent Aze.
On the State of the World's Children 2023 for Every Child's Vaccination, UNICEF in its findings revealed that 67 million children missed out entirely or partially on vaccines during the COVID-19 pandemic period, particularly between 2019 and 2020. According to UNICEF, lockdowns and disruptions to healthcare caused by the pandemic were at the origin of this. It said that in the past 3 years, more than a decade of hard-earned gains in routine childhood immunization have been eroded, adding that getting back on track will be challenging. UNICEF's April 19, 2023 report says the share of vaccinated children slipped 5 percentage points to 81%, the lowest since 2008. Africa and Asia were particularly hard hit. In other words, around 1 in 5 children worldwide were not fully protected against vaccine-preventable diseases. According to the data, confidence in childhood vaccines declined by 44% in some countries during the pandemic, a worrying warning signal, according to Catherine Rosell, UNICEF Executive Director. She says, confidence in routine immunization cannot be allowed to become another victim of the pandemic. Otherwise, the next wave of deaths could be of more children with measles, polio, or other preventable diseases. UNICEF officials note that vaccines have played a very important role in allowing more children to live healthy with long lives. The slight in vaccination rates could be compounded by other crises stemming from climate change, economic stagnation, food insecurity, conflicts, and so on, thus making it tougher for health systems and countries to meet vaccination needs. UNICEF calls on governments to step up on their commitment to increase financing for immunization, with special attention on accelerating catch-up vaccinations for those who missed their shots.
And now we take you to the southwest region, where strong winds have removed the roofs of at least 5 classrooms of Government High School Bukwango in Buea. This was as a result of the heavy rains in Buea witnessed on Wednesday. School administrators say urgent attention needs to be given to the situation, since Government High School Bukwango is a GC board accommodation center. We have details done by Smart Chikan Gabriel.
A black day for students of Government High School in Bukwango, Buea Southwest region. The heavy rains and strong breeze that visited Buea left at least 5 classrooms destroyed. Madame Mebokamata is the principal of GHS Bukwango.
Wednesday 19 at about 2 p.m. It was a heavy downpour that came alongside with a very heavy storm. So as a result, most of our buildings are damaged. You've seen the roofs have all gone off. Block A partially, Block B completely damaged, Science Lab damaged, Block C up damaged all, Block D partially, but 80% of the roof is off, the infirmary off, the school canteen off, the administrative block, part of it affected.
The rains that fell so badly was happening at a time when the students were still in school, but the school authorities say they managed the situation in a way that none of the students was hurt.
We were able to manage the crisis with the students. We got all the students from the upper steps to come down and enter the rooms under, so we had no human casualty, but for a single student that had an asthmatic attack, and the child was rushed to the hospital.
As a result of this incident, a crisis meeting held this Thursday at the campus of GHS Bukwango to sort out solutions on how to relocate the affected Form 5 students.
We have a hall in the school campus that will see how to put in about 4 different classes, especially the Form 5, because they are badly hit. It's the Form 5 students who are found in Block B, 3 of their classrooms. So we'll see how to put them in that hall so that we don't disrupt their classes since the GC is coming up.
GHS Bukwango, being an accommodation center of the GCE board, needs an urgent solution owing to the fact that the GCE exams will soon be written.
I have to write an official letter that will be forwarded to the divisional delegate and the regional delegate for onward transmission to the Minister of Secondary Education, because urgent repairs are necessary. Because if they don't do that, this is a GC accommodation center having external, other schools are writing here, the GHS itself, candidates are to write on campus. As you see, all the buildings are destroyed, and it's during the rainy season. How are they going to cope with exams?
Apart from GHS Bukwango, the rains of Wednesday in Buea also destroyed some private business places within the municipality. It is the 3rd consecutive time rain is falling in Buea and leaving casualties behind. Fortunately, this time around, no life was lost.
And still talking about the devastating consequences of the heavy rains witnessed in several parts of Cameroon, experts say for a proper and secured circulation of vehicles on the road, trees should be felled along the roadside at least 50 meters away. This follows the destruction of trees by strong winds on the Yaoundé-Ewusu road. Details with Mala Glory.
Strong winds has led to the falling of trees on the road linking Yaoundé and Ewusu corridor, an area between Sangmalima and Ekam at the borders between Cameroon and Congo. The local population and those neighboring villages are now panic-stricken. I am really worried. We crossed at least 6 trees on our way. This is the 7th tree and the most largest. That is why you see all these vehicles blocked here. Fortunately for us, we are about taking the trees from the road. Despite the fact that it is a natural phenomenon, Experts believe the government can still take preventive measures to avoid worse situations in the future.
Il faut simplement élaguer sur une emprise beaucoup plus grande.
The problem is to make the road wider by cutting down these giant trees from the roadside. At least 40 and 50 meters away is enough to secure circulation.
Largement suffisant pour sécuriser la circulation.
The fallen trees that blocked passengers for several hours were gradually disposed. No life was lost, but material damages recorded. Locals called on the authorities concerned to cut down these giant trees along the roadside and to be more cautious when attributing road construction projects to individuals or companies.
And on to something else. The president of the National Episcopal Conference has called on the government of Cameroon to ensure that extrajudicial killings happening in our country these days be highly investigated and the criminals brought to book. His Grace Andrew Nkia was speaking during the 48th plenary session of the National Episcopal Conference taking place in Yaoundé. The bishops think only frank dialogue can bring an end to the socio-political crisis in the northwest and southwest regions. We have more of this report compiled by Annabella Leke.
The bishops of Cameroon, together with the Universal Church, during the 48th plenary session of the National Episcopal Conference, stated with all firmness that human life is sacred and must be respected. The president of the National Episcopal Conference, who doubles as the Archbishop of the Bamenda Archdiocese, His Grace Andrew Nkia, condemned what he described as extrajudicial killings of Cameroonians in recent times, citing the brutal murder of journalist Martinez Zogo, plus other gruesome killings of compatriots. Archbishop Nkia makes a strong appeal.
I want to sincerely appeal to all the Cameroonians in this country. It's a very strong appeal. Please stop killing one another. We are all citizens of this country. We love our country, and we want each one to have a place in this country. No matter the situation, the fifth commandment of the Decalogue says, "Thou shalt not kill." And we are begging Cameroonians, stop killing one another. It is only with this mentality that we can each continue to live in peace.
And speaking on the 6-year armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions, the president of the National Episcopal Conference says frank and sincere dialogue plus divine intervention are imperative.
We all, military, separatists, everybody must realize that force can never bring peace, and that we all must pray, love one another, and collaborate with each other in dialogue, and that will bring us durable peace. This is very important.
The 48th plenary session of the Bishops of Cameroon is focused on examining the works of the 14th Commission to the National Episcopal Conference, also to examine issues affecting the political and social life in Cameroon, such as insecurity, high prices, and how the bishops can contribute to ensure the living conditions of Cameroonians be ameliorated.
Annabella Leke reporting there. And the report coming up next, our reporter Asia Lucy Liengu spoke with a legal mind, Barrister Kamwa Limen, who explains how the legal system of Cameroon operates with respect to or with regards to the civil and common law in relation to marriage and divorce. What should couples know about joint property and separate property? Her reports.
According to the legal system of Cameroon, the civil law system which operates in the French-speaking regions and the common law system which operates in the English-speaking regions, there are two types of marriages recognized by the law, polygamy and monogamy. The law also recognizes two types of marriage settlements, which are the joint property and the separate property. It is important to understand the basics of a joint property. A legal mind, Barrister Kawa Limen explains.
When they choose joint property, it means that all the things they buy to use in their marital life belongs to both of them. Meaning, therefore, that at the end, if they want to dissolve that marriage or they want to separate, the court equally has to render a judgment dividing that property between the two of them. And so, it is mostly done on what we can see, what we can evaluate. For example, plots, houses, vehicles. In the civil law jurisdiction, it is regulated by the civil code, and while in the common law jurisdiction, it is regulated by the Matrimonial Causes Act of 1973.
The legal mind also says at the time of divorce, the court divides the property in accordance with the chosen regime at the time.
If parties choose to divorce, it is the responsibility of the court to identify the properties and divide it equally between them. You see that even if a woman does not work, the time she spends at home, she's taking care of the children, she's taking care of the man, she's taking care of everything that makes the man happy to go and work. So she contributes, and that effort is quantified as her own contribution in the acquiring of that asset.
It is therefore necessary for couples to carry out an inventory before marriage.
It is a wrong thing to think that since a woman does not work, she has no right, she has no claim to properties that were acquired. It is wrong. So, usually it is advised that when you are getting married, you do an inventory of the things you have before marriage, so that at the time, in case there is a separation or divorce, they can easily identify those properties that were acquired within the period of the marriage.
The legal mind adds that there is a lot of controversy in most marriages nowadays because couples buy properties in the name of their family members.
A woman might decide to go and buy a land in the name of her mother, her brother, or the husband too might do same. But you see, the risk that they run is that when you put those properties in the names of other people, it becomes their property in the eyes of the law.
On the other hand, separate property means each spouse acquires and holds properties in personal names. No spouse has the right over the property or belongings of the other.
And now on to one of our major lead stories. Nutritionists and other health experts have advised all persons to always check the quality of what is consumed on a daily basis with regards to the fact that several poor quality products are on the market. Not being careful with what you consume is exposing you to illnesses. Babla Jonathan has more.
Many products of poor quality are sold in the markets, shops and other business sites in Cameroon. Some of the canned products and fresh farm products contain elements that are toxic to the human organism. Expired products are consumed by many, especially those who do not verify the expiry date of what they consume.
Si ces dates sont dépassées, il y a susceptibilité.
Biologist and nutritionist Mark Elise Tanke explains that once a product is expired, there is a possibility of a biological or chemical reaction that will activate microorganisms in the product that could cause illnesses in the consumer. Thus, checking the fabrication and expiry dates becomes very important.
Every time before I buy a product, especially like yogurt, like anyway, everything that's inside a bottle, I need to check the date, if the date is still correct. If it's not correct, I need to take it back to the seller if I didn't check while buying the product. But most of the time, I used to check, so everybody must do that.
Visuellement, il faut regarder le produit. Si c'est dans les boîtes, est-ce que c'est bombé? Est-ce qu'il y a la rouille?
Nutritionists also advise consumers to verify the physical state of the container and the state and odor of the product. Perishable farm products containing chemical substances are also toxic to the human system.
S'il y a déjà du verre, du noix dessus, ce n'est plus vraiment ça. C'est une viande qui a commencé à se gâter.
Meat having several colors, including black and green, is already getting bad, and bacteria are already active in it.
Si c'est du poisson, il faut regarder, par exemple, si c'est congelé, au niveau du ventre.
Frozen fish with an open and or puffed belly, eyes burst, and an abnormal skin is not proper for consumption.
De l'œil également, si les yeux sont percés et tout, c'est plus bon. On va regarder au niveau.
For perishable products, a drop in the physical state is an indication that it could be toxic for the consumer.
Chez les tout petits, la masse n'est pas beaucoup, donc facilement ça les intoxique et ça crée donc des perturbations.
Children and aged persons are more vulnerable and exposed to health complications that could emanate from the consumption of toxic products. Health experts recommend strict control of what is consumed by all.
For the first part, Talking Point is up next. Today on Talking Point, we'll be talking about the cholera outbreak in the central region of Cameroon. And today's edition of the program, I have as guest Nurse Liger. He is a public health official, and we'll be talking about a public health advocate, and we'll be talking about this cholera outbreak in that part of Cameroon. Hello, Nurse Liger. It is a pleasure having you on Talking Point today. A cholera outbreak has been reported in Yaoundé with 5 deaths recorded. What should a common man understand by the term cholera?
We've been hearing about cholera a lot. It's for the past couple of years that we've been hearing of outbreaks in cholera all over the country. And this time is the turn of the central region. But when we talk about cholera, we actually mean an infection. It's an infection that affects your intestines, or your GI tract as we call it medically. And it causes a lot of diarrhea, a lot of vomiting that leads to dehydration and ultimately death.
So, Nurse Liger, apart from diarrhea and vomiting, what are some other symptoms of cholera?
The first thing you'll notice when you have cholera, of course, will be diarrhea. You'll be vomiting. Of course, you have nausea, which means that you'll be feeling sick. Your neck will feel as if you want to vomit before the vomiting comes. You may actually identify that your stool is bloody. You will also find that you're extremely weak, you're extremely tired, you don't have an appetite. Sometimes this will be because you're vomiting too much, but sometimes it's actually because of the effects of the bacterium.
So now, an outbreak has been reported in Yaoundé with 5 deaths already recorded. What explains the frequent cholera outbreaks in Cameroon?
When you look at Cameroon, there is every reason for us to have repeated cases of waterborne diseases like cholera, dysentery, typhoid fever. If you look at typhoid fever, we no longer report it, right, because it's everywhere all the time. And it's the same reason why we have cholera, is the same reason why we have dysentery, primarily because our water sources are not clean. That's the first one. If there's anyone here who drinks cam water, who drinks water from the tap, unless it is municipal water, in some cases you find that our tap water is not clean. When you open the tap, you look at the water, it's scary. You are even scared to drink, and the water has a scent. And again, you look at our markets. If you've ever gone to any food market, I don't think I've seen any difference from food market, Bamenda, Yaoundé, all the markets. Once you enter the food market, you're going to find that it's horrible. It's very dirty. We have flies moving from everywhere, contaminating everything. You look at the guys who sell meat, soya, along the road. It's exposed. Flies come from everywhere, land on need. So our food sources in general in Cameroon are not clean, which is a very big risk factor for the development of infections such as cholera.
So, following the cholera outbreak in Yaoundé, is there a need for a nationwide panic?
Yes, we should have started panicking like a couple of years back. It's time that we really get into panic mode. And when I say panic mode, I don't mean we should, start running helter-skelter. I think it should be time for us to become very more conscientious. Everybody should make active steps towards the prevention of cholera, because cholera is nobody's friend. Cholera can kill a baby in 7 hours. From infection, from when the child is exposed, it can take less than 7 hours for the child to die. So you identify that cholera it's a very serious issue that we all need to take active steps in its prevention. We don't just need to sit and expect the government to do everything, because it is us who are dying. We are the ones who are feeling the pain. We are the ones who are losing loved ones. Yeah, so even though the government has made treatment of cholera currently free in the central region, you will still be the one feeling the pain if you get sick. So yes, we should panic. And by panicking, I mean we should take the right steps. We should do the right actions.
You earlier talked about the nasty state of some food markets in Cameroon. You mentioned some of these markets. So now, let's talk about the food we consume during parties or along the roadside. How do we tell it was prepared respecting basic hygiene rules, given that we weren't there when it was being prepared?
I think this is where herd sensitization comes in. If we are able to arrive at a situation where everyone is conscious, where everyone pays attention to what they are doing, it's going to help us. But because we are still very, very far from this, somebody like me, I don't eat in occasions because let me say I'm very susceptible to disease, so I try to avoid it because I don't know, the source of the food. I don't know how it was handled. I don't know how it was taught, and it just takes a very little infection to to affect everybody. So because we are not certain, we are not sure how this food was prepared, we are not sure how it was stored, we are not sure, even the plates that it's being served in, we are not sure of the water that they use to wash those plates. Sometimes it's just preferable that we should kill our langa and cook our own food by ourselves and eat it.
And we have equally noticed that it's very common to see some fruit sellers using formalin on their fruits to at least preserve these fruits. How dangerous is formalin in the human system?
If I had to answer it with just one word, I would just say very. Formalin is very poisonous, it's a toxic substance, and it's used for preservation. The reason why it's used for preservation is because it prevents the growth of bacteria. You know that most food gets bad, most foodstuff get bad because bacteria grow in them. So when you apply formalin, you actually prevent the growth of these bacteria. But then you're not only preventing the growth of bacteria, you're also preventing the growth, you're also introducing toxins to the human body. So when we use stuff that were not deserved for the preservation of food, or when we use them poorly, it causes major problems to the health.
Recently, a man was arrested in Bafoussam, that is the chief town of the West region, for producing fake Heineken beer. What are some of the health risks involved when you consume such a product?
Okay, yeah, just in line with that arrest, just a few months back, there was another arrest in Yaoundé. This time, a man was arrested. They said he had quarter brasseries. He was producing all forms of drinks, from wines to whiskeys and stuff. And all these things are toxic, because when you look at, maybe when you buy a beer produced by brasseries, you know exactly the alcoholic content in that drink. And if you're a smart person, you know the amount of that drink that you need to take in order to not exceed the healthy limit. But then you go and take from these guys who ferment it anyhow. They don't know the alcoholic concentration. They don't even take care of the hygienic conditions. So in addition to that being a possible source of infections like cholera, it can also increase your chances of getting, chronic diseases like cancers, like hypertension, like diabetes, and so on.
Nurse Liger, I have noticed that despite the fact that those involved in the activity of producing such drinks are arrested, many others still indulge in the business while blaming it on poverty. Do you think the punishment given to these persons is not adequate?
I guess the first thing is the way we look at it. When we look at it from a punitive point of view, punishment doesn't stop crime. It doesn't. Even if we implement the death sentence for these people, others are still going to do it, because everybody feels like I will not be the one who gets caught. So I think the core thing is to identify why these people get into this business in the first place. And of course, as you mentioned, is poverty. People don't have money. People are broke. People do jobs and they are not paid. Of course, the minimum wage is about 40,000. What can you do with 40,000 in Yaoundé or Douala? You cannot do anything with it. So you find that people are forced into a life of crime. Of course, I'm not justifying crime, but I'm saying that when you look at it, if we want to stop crime, the first thing that we need to do is to ensure that we take away the reason why people go into crime in the first place. People do this to eat. People do this to feed their families. People do this because it is lucrative. If the government could support and, just create a conducive environment where people can run lucrative businesses legally, it's going to help. And when we have big companies, like brasseries have bought Guinness, so it's one very large company that's controlling everything. When you have such a powerful company, they are actually going to prevent the startup of other companies, whether directly or indirectly. So when this happens, it's going to make these people to look for clandestine means of running these businesses. And of course, they will get into crime and put the health of all Cameroonians at risk.
So now, who should be blamed?
Everybody. Everybody has a part to play in this. I think that for so long, we have relied so much on the government that we have failed to see where we ourselves are lacking. It is not the government that is selling food in mud in the food markets. It is not the government that is selling meat exposed. It's not the government that is selling soya that is exposed. It's not the government that is using dirty water to wash plates and distribute food to people. Yes, we understand that the government have their own limitations. Of course, they have a very big part of the blame as well. But if we continue blaming them is not going to help a lot. We need to pay a lot of attention to ourselves, because that is the biggest part we can control. So when we start blaming ourselves, it's going to be more fruitful, because it's going to enable us to take actions that are important and significant in the prevention of these diseases.
What about the Ministry of Trade and Commerce and that of the Ministry of Public Health? Are they not supposed to be on the field to ensure that what we eat is of good quality? Yes.
Okay, even before the Ministry of Trade, right? Actually, the Ministry of Health has to control the quality of every food product in the market. In a country like the US, they have the FDA, the Food and Drug Association. In Nigeria, they have NAFDAC. In Cameroon, there is an association as well, which is supposed to control the quality of foods and drugs in the market. But of course, we will never see them. It's just, like Cameroon is very good in the books, as they often say it. So if these guys, if these people were playing their part, yes, it's going to reduce the incidence, but it's not going to, completely stop it unless we ourselves take action. So although I recognize that they are not playing their part, I also feel that if we continue pointing fingers at them, it's not going to help us, because we've been pointing fingers since forever and nothing is happening. I think it's time we rather take action and do what we can do.
And what measures can be taken to curb the spread of cholera in Cameroon?
Okay, now let's start at an individual level, at what you can do, what I can do. The very first thing we can do is to wash our hands. Last year, a document was released by the WHO, and they said that just hand washing can prevent at least 1 million deaths every year. And if we are able to wash these hands properly, we will prevent this 1 million deaths and over 10 million cases of sickness. So if we are able to wash our hands and wash them properly, that is already a first step. And when I say wash our hands properly, what does it mean? It means you should wash your hands with soap and running water for at least 20 seconds, and you should make sure that you wash every part of your hands. You rinse the hands with clean water and you wipe them with a disposable towel. And you should also wash hands every time you have to wash them, which is before you touch food, before you handle food, after you handle food, before you use after you use the toilet, and after you deal with anything or any time that your hands are visibly dirty. It's extremely important that we wash our hands in these scenarios. And there is also one thing which I know it's a bit difficult to implement based on our cultural inclinations, which is that we should reduce handshakes. You don't know where somebody's hands were before they came and used them to greet you. If we could reduce handshakes, it's also going to play a huge part in preventing the spread of disease. And of course, we should pay attention to the water we drink. If you are unable to buy bottled water, even though these days we also have bottled water that is dirty. I have seen a scenario where I bought Supemont. I bought a 10-liter container of Supemont, opened it, and it was smelling. The water was, it had an odor, because everything has been imitated. There's a fake for everything. So the safest thing to do is that you make sure that you boil your water. The Ministry of Public Health is currently distributing water purification kits, where you just drop a kit. It's in sachets. You put one sachet into a container, I think it's 10 or 20 liters of water, and wait for 30 minutes, and it's safe for drinking. If you can lay your hands on that, perfect. If you cannot lay your hands on it, then make sure you boil your water. You boil it in a clean pot, allow it to cool down before you drink it. That's the safest thing to do.
Gang Liger Andy Jones, nurse and public health advocate right here in Cameroon. That's it for today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your keen attention. Stay in the company of more interesting programs on ETV. Have a lovely evening, and so long.